Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Things We Know. Today, we're talking about emotional regulation, which I'm only laughing at because I've been having a hard time with this recently. It
Who
sounds,
isn't?
I know, right? I mean, it sounds clinical, but it really is just about how do we not let our emotions run the whole show, which might sound counter intuitive to what us having our one of our most popular episodes be Feel Your Feelings.
Yeah.
But it's really not. It's almost the companion piece to that 3 years later.
Yeah, it's true. And as we'll get into, I think, I hope, I I do think there's a difference between feeling your feelings and regulating like how you respond to your feelings, right?
Yeah.
It's not like feeling your feelings means bleh. But anyway, I'm sure there's more technical terms than that noise I just made. Um, so it's never about feeling it's not about never feeling angry or
Right.
anxious because that's just human. And I love talking about that too, which we've talked about here before. And it's one of the reasons I'm attracted to you as a friend is like, it's it's really actually healthy to feel those things and angry and anxious. And I think we've grown up in a time where parents think that, oh, like you don't be angry, honey, don't be sad, don't be, and they kind of suppress it. And I think we're seeing how that does damage. So what it's
Mm,
about is creating enough space between what we feel and what we do, right? Like how I feel and how I either react or respond to that feeling is what this is about. It's the difference, right? Like there's a huge difference if you feel that in your body, like reacting to something or responding to something immediately. To me, I don't know, I'm curious what it is for you, but to me, it sounds like you're taking a breath first.
yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, and we didn't talk about this, and I don't even know if this is why you suggested this topic, but it is kind of reflective of the course you and I both just took around
Yeah,
positive intelligence
it
and
is
the
why.
right? It is it okay. Good thing we're talking about that right now. But the whole point of the class that we just took, or the course we just took, is feelings are needed, right? If you are feeling angry, that's okay. It alerts you to something is wrong. Something's not in alignment. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling whatever, anxious. So you don't want that to go away, but and I'll look his name up here in a second. Coach Shiraz, I know it's his first name. Um, if you leave your hand, it's like putting your hand on the stove and leaving it there if you sit in those feelings too long. So there is a place where it's like, okay, let's you have the feeling, but you don't want to linger there because it doesn't actually serve.
Yeah. We've talked about this so many times now that I think about it, about how like, yeah, I just try not to live there. Um, that's true. There's this great quote by Viktor Frankl, and I'm a big fan of Viktor Frankl's writing. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response.
Mm.
I think uh, that came up so much for me when I was going through this course is like, oh, I get to choose this response. It's a difference between living your life and having life live you, right? And run your days. And some days I'm good at this, and sometimes I am not. It's like
Yeah.
for me, well, like to get into it, the first thing I think of where I need the most reminders around this is parenting and caregiving. I think there are times when maybe my stress level's high. I'm a pretty low blood pressure person. I don't generally identify with I'm stressed,
Yeah.
but it's a different kind of stress in the body, right? Where it's like I'm stretched is more like it.
Mm.
And I'm probably underslept. It's not always because of seizures. It's often because of a 4-year-old dog who wakes me up, but which is a problem I put on myself. And then one more demand will push me to the edge. I laugh about that when I think about them being young, where I'm
Mm.
working full time trying to get them out the door and or get them ready for carpool pickup or something. And I've been just the picture of healthy parenting all morning. Remember this? We got you up in time, and here's your cute little reminders, and here's this, and then like just one more time goes from and remember to watch time to get your fucking shoes on.
A
Like,
million
how did
percent.
I go from 0 to 60? Right. So I think over time and a lot of error, error and trial, heavy on
Yeah.
the error, I've learned that's usually like, that's my cue to pause and not to push through. And I am not
Mm,
pretending that I do it all well still. I still have my moments. I am noticing with an elderly dog and a son who sometimes has cerebral cortex stuff that I'm still feeling this urgency to get an answer right away or get a response right away. And like watching that it almost comes out of my mouth to be like, can you do that a little quicker?
mm,
Or like wanting, and obviously my compassion for the situation they're both dealing with keeps me from doing that even more so than my good self-training. But I'm still noticing that part of me that a reaction is impatience.
interesting.
Yeah.
I just have to giggle because every time you said that one little thing, I just always think of Monty Python. One thin wafer, wafer thin mint.
Before the big vomit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which it could be, right? Like if you are not used to feeling your feelings, then you might do the thing where you just tamp it down, tamp it down, tamp it down. And then the straw that breaks the camel's back means word vomit and anger and passive aggressive anger, and to speak to Ozzy or Mabel, like I've never had a dog, but I've known the thing around you don't come home and see that a dog's messed something up and get mad at them or hit them because they don't know what they've done, right? And that's the thing too. I often think when people don't feel their feelings or don't have good emotional regulation, that the thing that the anger that comes out, the language that comes out is often so very much not about what's happening in the moment, but everything else that piled up that got them there,
Right.
right?
Right. I've been seeing this video recirculate about, like if someone bumps into you while you're drinking coffee,
Yes.
like what comes out of your cup. It's like whatever you're carrying is going to spill out. If it's
Yep.
water, if it's coffee, if it's sewer water, like whatever. Like
Yeah.
what are you carrying?
Yes.
If you're
Did you
working
send that
on,
to me or am I also seeing that?
I, I don't know. You and I often send something to the other, and then the other one sends it back and doesn't even
It's
know it.
true.
Like I think it's great. I think we are attracted to the same things.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, like I think it's funny because when we were looking at this, I was like, the way people can sometimes respond or react is silent treatment or passive aggression or even people pleasing, which is interesting because I didn't
Hmm.
get that when I read that. I was like, how do people respond with people pleasing? But I get that that's sort of a flight way. It's like the best way to respond to this, and sometimes it's a feeling of emotional safety, is to
Yep.
just go along with it. But like
Yep.
there's something that's reactionary about that. So that's a really interesting thing to observe.
Well, and also if people pleasing, or again in our emotion or positive intelligence course, the idea of the saboteur that is the pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
You think you are doing this for love, safety, and belonging. If I don't, I'm feeling really angry or I'm feeling really something, but I'm just going to be nice. So it goes back to our just be nice episode. You start to lose yourself in that process. And in that episode, in being a people pleaser, in flattering or going along to get along, you actually are not building up any kind of love, safety, or belonging because the person that you are doing that to intuitively or maybe actually doesn't really trust that what you're saying and how you're being is real. So it
Right.
kind of defeats the purpose of all of that. It's funny you said 0 to 60. I guess I've always been told I was a 0 to 60 person. So I don't, and maybe my regulation comes in that I don't hold back anything. And so I get through it fast,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't linger. So, I mean, of course, I also live with a man who is not, and he's 0 to 0. So,
He just switches couches.
yeah, pretty much. Although I shouldn't
uh,
say that. He is one of those people that like he just keeps it in, and then something, one wafer
yeah.
thin mint is the thing that puts him over the
I
edge for
can't even
sure.
picture that with Darren.
I know it's
With
pretty odd.
It's amazing our husbands haven't met yet.
I know.
what is interesting about, I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth re-mentioning here in this context is when you just said that, I think there are ways that I realized, like my family of origin, we did not shy away from arguing. And
Mm,
my parents modeled that really well as equals. And I feel like, you know, there was a time when Brenda and I first got together where we were like, oh, your parents were better at this because they didn't fight. But then over
right.
time, we realized, like, oh, my parents also modeled how to repair and how to not take things set in the heat personally, but also, Brendan was good at getting us to be kind. But like his response to the way I would like, was to just shut down and feel really, really
Mm,
wounded.
yeah.
And so even if my reaction was about something I was justifiably upset about, like where I'd felt wronged, we were just both like kind of taking care of him, right? And I don't
Mm,
know if it's getting too personal, but like this is something we've learned over time, is
right.
that there is something somewhat healthy about the and repair
Right.
versus the internalized shove it down and simmer. We have a friend who like says her mom was always like, take your feelings, put it in a box, lock it away, right?
Yeah.
Like those, there's ways to work on both of those that would be
Right.
much
A
healthier,
million
like the
percent.
take a breath, let me ask a question, what did you mean by that, instead of respond to what I'm assuming you meant by that. I think that that's where a lot of like great communication is helpful. So much in what we learned in our training, so much of our suffering comes from the stories we're telling ourselves immediately about what's being said and what's done. And so our emotional dysregulation or regulation, like our emotional response to these things, and reaction to these things, are based on that story we're telling ourselves in a really hot second.
Yeah.
So if it helps, like you said, like ask a question, that like gives you time to breathe. Like, could you explain to me what was your intention when you said that hit me hard, but maybe you didn't mean to sting me, right? Like that is one great way. It's not the only way, as my therapist said, not everyone's verbal like you, Kari, not everyone has to talk, but that's one way that works for me, is, especially like if Griffin reacts to me for something, instead of going, don't do that, like don't, I'll be like, did you mean to respond so harshly when I,
That's such
told
a
you your
great
breakfast is on
question.
the table? Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting. I was, I am not, nobody's ever perfect at this, right? So once again, we're in a presence. We're a work in progress around all this stuff. That's why these are the things we know. But I told you, and I won't go into detail, but like there's some additional stress in our house right now, and I think I'm managing it pretty well. I think I'm managing my emotions around it pretty well. But a couple of weeks ago, I lost my goddamn shit all over Darren, and I say that story to say that the next morning I woke up and absolutely came in and repaired, because I told him, I said, what I did last night, the anger that I directed towards you about literally the stupidest thing. I mean, talk about wafer thin mint. It absolutely had nothing to do with why I was angry. I'm not even angry at him. I'm just angry at my situation right now. And I took it out on him. So it is interesting that even when you think you're emotionally regulating, when you think you're when you're handling things, that it can come out of the blue, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then repair is so important. Which again, we did a whole episode on repairing. I think that was season one as well. Um, yeah, there's just this. I love this quote from Dan Siegel, who is a researcher. He says there's a window of tolerance. We each have a zone where we function well. Outside of it, we either go hyper aroused, fight, flight, or hypo aroused, freeze, shut down.
Mm,
I definitely was hyper aroused that night.
yeah. And I was just telling you before we hit record where I go hypo aroused, like
Mm,
sometimes where I get flooded
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in something like sometimes it's politics, but it isn't always. And in something that I feel emotional about, I will often just, I mean, and God, we went through things as a staff together, like where that would
Mhm.
happen to me, where I couldn't find the words. And maybe, I mean, gosh, I'm sure there's plenty of professionals out there would say, like maybe that comes from a childhood of feeling like I couldn't be taken seriously if I was emotional. I'm not sure.
Mm,
But what would happen is I would like kind of do that flight internally. But
interesting.
I think then it would always like drive me to then go write that out, and then send something afterwards to be like, this is how I feel about that. And that was easier for me than in the moment to like find the words. But I'm getting better at that, at just finding the words in the moment.
But
But
I
yeah,
would
that
think
is
the
something I
fact of
sometimes
like,
do.
I would think going back though, and then being able from a place of, I mean, I'm going to use the word neutrality to be more clear on what you said, because the chances are, if you had said something, even if you had said what you ultimately said in the moment, it would not have come out with clarity and possibly kindness, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I was able to do with Darren, was go back and be like, look, what I was angry about last night had zippo to do with what I'm actually angry about. And I'm not angry with you. I'm not angry at all with you. I'm angry, you know.
Hmm.
And I could not find those there. I couldn't even connect with that was what was happening in the moment at that night. You know, I was just literally just pissed about a very stupid situation.
Mm.
So I think there's something really valuable about still being able, even if you in the moment retreat, coming back out and still being able to share what is necessary. I mean, that still feels to me like
Mm.
emotional regulation.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, some of the wisdom that we get just being older humans living on this earth long, like I am so less, stung than I used to be, because we know that anything spewing out of someone, including you in that moment, is more about what's going on with you internally than anything else. It doesn't
Yeah.
always excuse it. It's nice that you repaired and took responsibility, but it also helps me not get so wounded beyond repair. If someone does that, it's just like, whew, like
Yeah.
that, like, so that's a you thing. And
Yeah.
like, this
Yeah.
isn't fun. And I'm going to actually go take space from it, but let's talk when you get your shit together. Right. That's, that's sometimes like, again, my worst moments, I have said to Brendan, like, if I do that, I would just ask that you know, open your arms bigger and just embrace whatever's going on with me and don't take it personally. We haven't had that in so long, so I can't exactly remember how I said that or what I said, but in a situation like that, it really helps if your response is to just be really loving to someone being shitty. It's so hard though. Just loving
Yeah.
it and also like not accommodating it, just like something's going on with you.
I mean, it's
Come
so
back when
funny
you can talk
because,
about it.
well, that's just it. And Darren was in that moment. He actually did not fight. He was just like, I'm sorry you feel this way. I'm sorry, la la la. I think I was just in a blind rage.
And good for him for not.
Totally. Totally. But
Yeah.
even that, like, responding with love may not calm the waters in the moment, or, you know what I mean? Um, yeah, no.
So there's a lot of tools, some that we help people with as coaches, some that we don't use ourselves, some we do. Some,
Yeah.
I one that uh, I like to remember when I'm a little bit more on my game of like daily ritual around just kind of grounding, which has really been helpful reminder with this positive intelligence training too.
Hmm.
And it's brought me back to like my Mark Nepo readings and Thich Nhat Hanh. This quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, I've always felt like is the thing to aspire to, right? And whether it's like emotions are like waves, you don't have to ride them all to shore. I think he said feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor, right? So it's like
Mm,
if you can feel yourself bigger than your feelings, it goes back to that thing I always say, which is, like I do this with clients or my kids all the time or myself. Try not to identify as that feeling like, oh, I'm mad, but just
right.
like I'm experiencing like anger right now. And it sounds
Yeah.
silly, it sounds clinical, but it really does help you kind of take a breath and see the anger instead of be the anger.
Yeah. And then for me, it absolutely is naming. I mean, there's I think I've shared this before, but in that was an anomaly situation for me a couple of weeks ago because normally if I am feeling really angry or sad, I tell everyone that I'm going to be around. And I do it simply to like alert them, but also to let them know that if I do lose it, it's not about them, it's about how I'm feeling today. And I find that when I name it, it doesn't actually show up then. I don't actually lose it because I've acknowledged that it exists within me.
Mm, I love that. I love that about you too. You've always like, I mean, I think in our world, it's so important too to be like, hey, I'm just gonna be like this. And to me, the subtext is don't coach me. I'm just gonna be this way, which I think is
Also
really
that,
smart.
yes.
What else? What else is a tool you use?
I mean, I am not a huge a breath work person, I don't think, but I will say again, going back to this positive intelligence course we both just took, and I looked up the gentleman's, he just goes by Coach Sherazad. Um, I that the he has us do, or he taught us how to do what he calls PQ reps, positive intelligence reps. And so it's just a moment of absolute intentionality, whether it's the couple that I love is breathing in, feeling the temperature of the air as you breathe in and the temperature of the air as you breathe out, or rubbing your two fingers together or your hand over your hand with such intention. And it goes back to you kind of can't do two things at once. So if you're really
Mhm.
paying attention to those things, and I think what works for me in those is they're not meant to be long moments of time. It's three
Right.
breaths, and that's about all my monkey mind can handle. So, but I find that if I do one, I'll move into another. And again, to go, not to keep belaboring an incident, but that night I was having such a hard time sleeping because once I did kind of emotionally regulate, um, I was so sad that I'd been so angry, and so I'm just gonna say it, I was mean. And and so I found myself falling asleep and waking up, and of course then my mind immediately went to that, and it was like I almost couldn't wait for Darren to wake up so I could go in and be like, I am so sorry. Um, so what I was doing to fall back asleep were some of this breath work or this
Mhm.
intentional touch, I guess is a good way of putting it. Um, so I would say now that is definitely something I would go to.
I like the one where he tells you to pick a color in your mind and then look for something in the
I
room
forgot
and
about that one.
focus on that one as you breathe. That's really, really helpful. And I've used that with Griffin and with a client. And it's just so
That's a good one.
helpful and
Yeah.
kind of, it feels silly and distracting, but it completely shifts the energy. I like that a lot. And then I also, as you know, because we do this for each other over text, like humor
Yeah.
is possibly an Irish Catholic is, numbing agent, but it actually really works. If I can laugh at the absurdity of a situation, even briefly, it shifts my nervous system out of fight or flight. It was so essential to me. My whole life I've been that way. It isn't always the healthiest thing or the healthiest moment, but like where it not only like helped me shift, but also like helped me help others, was as a parent of young kids where you're in a situation like you just the absurdity of parenting young kids who are potty training, like what you're doing in those moments, like
Yeah.
you never thought you'd hear yourself say, "Don't lick the toilet seat," or you know what I mean? Like these really weird moments of kids just kind of being in a public bathroom and you're trying to change after swim lessons and just the like me, maybe texting a friend going, once again, Paula Abdul or Sheila E's glamorous life is the soundtrack of my life. And I'll like take a picture of total chaos. Like those things are much better for me than to be like, fuck this shit. Not that I haven't done that too, but I think about my response sometimes to things that could really upset me or depress me is often humor. A lot of
Gallows
times it
humor is the
helps.
best.
Yeah.
Gallows humor is the best. I mean, again, we're going, you and I in being coaches, we see this all the time, women holding it together at work, unraveling at home. Um, Great.
Yeah.
boundaries, personal or professionally, but not personally. This again isn't about being perfect. This is about feeling the feelings and figuring out how to move through those. Um, what are some of the things that you've seen come up for your clients?
Um, with one in particular that I'm thinking of, it's interesting because yes, I've seen the boundaries where people are like, I blew up at her, I blew up at him, I blew,
Yeah,
um that tends to happen when people are over giving and under, not caring for themselves. They might be over
right.
serving themselves. No. but but one in particular that I'm thinking of is like her emotional regulation is she is completely shutting down and experiencing a bit of, for lack of a better word, abuse of a grown child that's really taking advantage of her
Mm,
and dealing with their own stuff and kind of mimicking a pattern that her ex-husband used to follow and probably is modeling it after. That's probably what this young person saw. So like what we work on is her not abandoning herself, and that's emotional regulation, is being able to recognize that she's wronged and not shut down, but find calm ways to create boundaries in the moment. And it has been really hard work for both of us to like get this, but like we're really seeing some progress. And so that comes to top of mind because it's really rewarding. It's better, like it's creating less room for him to do anything but like seek help for himself, which is good.
mm.
And it also allows her that, like, just that self-respect and that sense of like what she deserves. So yeah, I see, but mostly I see the other where they're whatever's in their cup is spilling out and they don't like it and they feel bad, and trying to get them to like learn how to ask for what they need and come from a more grounded self is generally the kind of work I do with
It's
clients. Yeah.
interesting because what I've been seeing recently, I've had it myself. I believe I had it myself at the beginning of the year. But I've been seeing like an illness. I always reflect, it's dis-ease. But
Mm,
I find I have a couple of clients, and as I said, I believe this was happening to me earlier in the year after the inauguration of just the amount of anger or frustration or whatever that they think they're managing, and then all of a sudden they get sick, whether it's a
yeah.
cold or uh for me, I actually got physically sick, and it's just it is going to come out one way or the other. It might be passive aggressive, it might be illness, it might be, fill in the blank. But if you're having a tough time taking your hand off the stove, again going back to it's okay to have a feeling, and you should, but don't, if you're having a hard time emotionally regulating out of it and keeping your hand on the stove instead of pulling it away, it will show up.
Mm, yeah. Um, I think too, it is, I mean, even thinking back to you saying, God, I felt so mean, you're not somebody I ever worry about being unkind to yourself. Like you feel bad, so you went and acted on it. However, like even you having that just reminds me that so many of the people we know and work with and are, we see our friends doing this to themselves on group chats. And I even do it. It's like this dehumanizing ourselves for being, like, or really being unkind to ourselves for being human. And the way we
Mm,
reacted to things then becomes another heavy thing to like carry
right.
versus, um, like in no way are you and I right now, in case you're listening, and wondering this, are we saying, get this right? What we're saying is notice,
Yeah,
notice like when you are being human and reacting, notice like how you're making it worse by shitting on yourself for it, right?
right.
Like
Yeah.
making it worse by like, God, I'm such a bad person and I don't deserve this. And like, it sounds ridiculous when I'm saying it, but it's exactly, if you really pay attention to that inner voice, what's happening and unraveling. And that just adds to the heavy and creates even more reaction because shame creates the biggest explosion, right? On yourself and everyone around you. So notice that, like Brene Brown's reminder that dehumanization starts with words absolutely includes the way we diminish ourselves. People who are dehumanizing others out in the world right now, I guarantee you, they are hardest on themselves. They have some deep shame. We may not see it. We may not even find that easy to believe, but really truly, like I have someone in my life that constantly will say to me, "Oh, I don't want to whine at you." I don't, well, I shouldn't say constantly because I don't see her that often. She used to live near me, but it was always like, I don't want, and it's like, okay, so if I tell you what's going on with me, am I whining? And then,
Yeah.
like, it, there's this way that we just make our emotions just so negative, and then we feel worse, and then it just carries on to the next thing. So I think it's just really important to be kind to yourself, and you'll find your reactions become easier responses.
Well, I think what you just said about when you say it out loud, it sounds so ridiculous. That's part of the problem is we don't say these things out loud,
Right.
right? It's an internal voice that is easy to, um, whether it's an intrusive thought or whatever it might be, it's a constant, unless you're lucky enough not to have an internal monologue. It's constantly, it's a loop that's running. But if you actually said the word out, if you said those words out loud, you'd realize that's again, even saying it's a ridiculous thing to think feels sounds like shaming, but that it doesn't make sense. So
Mm.
again, when it sits in there, nobody but you hears it. But when you say it out loud, even hearing yourself say it out loud could shift it. Just a thought.
One of the first coaches I ever had, probably the first, mindset type of coach when I had young kids was like, and it was, when I was juggling like what was unfolding with Griffin and diagnoses and what was unfolding with my dad in diagnoses, and flying back and forth and just never feeling like I was being a good daughter or a good mom, good, professional in my job. And she suggested that I start paying attention to that voice and hearing and seeing it in like a ridiculous cartoon character. And it was like this cartoonish drill sergeant that I sort of remember from Looney
Oh yeah,
Tunes.
yeah,
And
yep,
it was so absurd and then yet so helpful to realize like how ridiculous, like how absurdly mean I was to myself. And I
mm,
guess I thought everyone walked around with that kind of voice. And she was like, "Yours is particularly harsh. I think you should give it a cartoon tone."
wow,
And that really helped,
yeah,
like really helped, where because then you start looking for it, and it just gives it automatically, as that as an assignment, gives you like a minute to step back and kind of consider how the way I'm talking to myself is creating my reactions.
yeah. Okay, so we've given a lot of tools. What is one you
Yeah.
want somebody to try this week?
I think it's that noticing that split second where you have a choice. You're like, oh, this is how I'm going to react. Is there any other way I might react that I could feel better about later? It could save your sanity. It could help your relationship. It could create a moment of a brain fart and laughter. Who knows?
Totally, totally. And yeah, yeah, I mean, that pause can change everything. And as you said, we don't have to be
Yeah.
perfect at this. If you caught even 10 moments in a day, and you might think 10 moments, I don't have that many. Oh, you do. If you could do 10 pauses, whether it is the way you're talking to yourself or the way you're feeling, but again, this isn't the action item around it, is just notice,
Mm,
as you said, right? It's not do anything with it. Is one of the things, again, I'm harping on this course, but I loved that our first sort of training was catching our saboteurs, catching these feelings when they were happening and just noticing and celebrating that you noticed them.
mm,
I thought that was a really easy way of easing into this stuff because if
yeah.
you're not somebody that feels like they are emotionally regulated, going 0 to 60 in this is not going to be helpful
No,
either.
totally. I think I think one takeaway I'd love for people to have is, or suggestion is, pick one area of your life.
Mm,
Don't walk away and just like, oh great, I got a lot of work to do. Like just for like curiosity, just like with you and your partner, with you and your child, with you and a colleague, with you and a neighbor you always run into, like where in your life could you just use this as like a practice with the pause. Like
Mm,
notice, and it might, you might be really happy with how you notice you respond. That's a good thing too, but
totally.
like just maybe find a place to practice it.
Yeah,
And
again, another great quote from Viktor Frankl is in that space between stimulus and response lies our power.
yeah, I love it.
I know. That's yeah, just noticing. And I want to reiterate what you just said. And if you are happy with the way it's going, I want you to celebrate that too, because I think then when you realize there are places you want to that you want to shift, you know that you already do it well somewhere else. I think sometimes you can feel overwhelmed by thinking, oh, as you said, oh, I have to shift it in all these places. But if you could start with where do I feel like I do this well, it reminds you that you can also do it well in other areas of your life.
Yeah, I am about to sneeze again. Hold on.
Okay,
Okay.
bless you.
The song that we didn't take a ton of time to pick, but it applies, is Everybody Hurts by REM.
Hmm.
Do you want me to read those?
Yes, please.
I don't think I even grabbed like maybe the most perfect ones, but it all kind of does apply, which is when your day is night alone, hold on. If you feel like letting go, hold on. If you think you've had too much of this life, well, hang on, because everybody hurts. Take comfort in your friends. Everybody hurts.
Hmm.
And I think that is a good reminder
Yeah,
in those moments.
everybody has
Hurt
anger.
people.
Yeah, and the hurt people that hurt people probably have not learned how to have some emotional regulation, and that is
That's
sad.
true.
You know, this
Yeah.
this this isn't something that everybody learns to do. I think we've been lucky enough to have training and we've done personal growth stuff, and that's why we like to impart this on the things we know.
Mm.
All right, everyone, we'll be back next week. Thank you.
Bye.